Hello and welcome everybody to this panel about scaling up an effective and efficient commercial operations model for Europe. Before we start, first let me introduce myself. My name is Volkmar Heitzer. I am responsible for business development in Europe on behalf of Indegene. I'm located here in Switzerland and I'm looking forward to this panel discussion. Before we start, let me give some aspects about Europe. Europe is in the market unlike any other. Although Europe Union has over 400 million people, there's no one-size-fits-all approach, which can apply across the various countries and markets in Europe. Besides, we face a stronger GDPR regulation. We also face different country-specific laws, and maybe even more interesting, also country-specific culture and historic expectations. For the life sciences leaders and the commercial operation leaders, like my experienced round of panelists, they have to navigate diverse challenges ranging from a wide spectrum of digital maturity between balancing global scale and also versus local agility. We want to talk about the experience we have gained so far, especially during the last 2+ years. What have we seen so far? What does it take to come to customization and scale? What lessons can we potentially share with the audience when companies want to grow in Europe, taking advantage of the increased demand for a digital-led first approach? Therefore, we are honored to host an round of experts who have substantial experience building up brands, setting up teams, and scaling transformation across Europe. So I'm honored to have this audience to light a shed on this discussion today. So please welcome my guests. We have Fiona Garin. Fiona is Vice President at Becton Dickinson. Fiona is leading the Strategic Marketing and Communications Department across the BEA. Fiona joins us from Madrid. Welcome also Andrea Bean.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Fiona. Sorry. Welcome, Andrea. Andrea Bean is the Global Head of Commercial Excellence at Vifor, located quite close in Zurich in Switzerland. Welcome, Andrea.
Hello, everyone.
Also, we have Jan Dieman. Jan Dieman leads the Digital OC Strategy and Execution team across Europe and Canada. Jan is also located here in Zurich in Switzerland. Welcome, Jan.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Nice to be on this panel. Thank you.
Last but not least, we have Matthew Mason. Between other topics, Matthew is leading the European transformation at Insight. Matthew is located in the wonderful place of Morges at Lake Geneva. Welcome, Matthew.
Hi, everybody. Great to be part of this panel today.
Thank you very much for joining this panel. I would like to kick off the discussion, the conversation, with giving the first question to you, Fiona. And the question which rises and probably appeals to all of us is, how does the digital transformation change the relationship with your customers? And how does it support, amplify, or change the classical approach? That's probably a question nobody has a full answer, but it's interesting and would be really interesting to know what your experience is concerning this question.
So thanks very much for your question, Volkmar, and it's great to be here today. I think I would look at this from first and foremost, the digital transformation company to have a better understanding of the customer buying journey. And that really involves having a customer pain points and actually really better customers' preferred channels of engagement are. I think engaging across multiple touch points with customers, we have been able to drive increased top of mind awareness as well as recognition, not to solely rely on our field sales interactions. And ultimately, we expect this to have an impact on our sales effectiveness and efficiency. Similarly, we're expecting this to enable our own stakeholders to make better and faster decisions for the patients and healthcare systems because they have faster and better access to relevant information. We've been able to have more personalized customer engagement. We've been able to add, I think, more value to every customer interaction. And this, I think, is connected to improved customer experience, where we've been aiming to drive kind of experiences, greater collaboration, and improve community. A few examples of this. So We've been driving more remote training, virtual demos and tours, more immersive experiences. So this includes both virtual as well as augmented reality. And what's new, and I think has some of the relationships with our customers, is community setups for peer actions and exchanges. Additionally, the content that we actually are producing and the format we have is evolving from being more static to interactive. And last but not least, I think in terms of relationships, it's really enabling us to engage with a broader set of different profiles, and even to potentially extend our reach to patients and citizens who we have a chance to get to know better. In essence, it allows us to have more of a dialogue with our customers as opposed to just a monologue, and to receive actually more comprehensive feedback, which, I mean, with those insights, trying to fine tune and improve our communications and products.
Thank you. Very interesting. You brought up a wide spectrum, and also when the ongoing question, like the relationship, that this is now changing also from a monologue towards a dialogue. So not really only sending out messages and interacting in one direction, but going to a dialogue. You also mentioned agility and giving more access directly. Andrea, when we started more than almost now 2 years ago, and you started before we met, of course, and you have experience from other companies prior to Vifor. And from your perspective, additional triggers you can think of how you triggered this journey in Vifor? What were the main triggers when you look back, how it started?
Thanks, Wolfgang. And also from my side, it's great to be here with all of you in this panel. So when we think about the triggers that basically have stimulated us as an organization to move into this transformation, the first one, it was clearly a big opportunity that we were having in front of us, because as a company, we are basically launching 4 products across all the geographies. So it's for this reason then when we have started to think about how to make these new medicines available to all the countries in a very effective, compelling way, we have really started to think about what is the best way to engage with the customers. And as Fiona was mentioning, it's clearly that we are seeing a big transformation right across the globe that has been definitely accelerated by the COVID basically situation that happened. And what we have basically seen is that the customers, they're getting more and more used to exchange and to get to know like the medicines in many different ways, not only in the face-to-face interaction, but across many different additional channels. So it's this reason that we have taken this as an opportunity to think the way that we are engaging with the physicians. Also an important aspect and a requirement that we have seen in this transformation from our side has been that really it's very important to be centric, and understand the needs of our customers, particularly physicians, but not only physicians, but all their care professionals. And this is something that in the industry we are talking quite extensively, being more customer-centric and so on. But I think that one of the key requirements in this kind of function for our side is been really listening the customers, understanding how to make sure that we are going to adapt the way that we engage, and as well producing right contents that embedded all the feedback and the needs that of our customers.
Thank you. Yes, and typically when we talk about Europe and scaling or expanding through Europe, we typically face the classical big 5, like it's Germany, UK, Nordics, Scandinavia, which tend to be different or maybe resourced well enough on their own to drive this transformation. But we still also want to offer, like almost like in a hub, a centralized approach. But still the countries vary from a maturity level. So looking at Jan, who's also like across Europe and even including Canada, from your experience, can you figure out, or can you share if there are customer preferences concerning on the country by country wise, and how does this impact the setup you have to offer to the regions in Europe?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Maturity is an interesting topic, right? And I think my colleagues will probably agree with me that the maturity across our countries, take Europe alone, you're dealing with 35 countries, depending on how you divide them. But it's a lot, right? It's not just one single European Union and everybody clicks the same way. And if you don't mind, Volkmar, I will try to answer your question in two ways. So first of all, from a external perspective, right, the customers. We probably have to accept that the digital maturity or the maturity of our customers is mostly set by the external environment they all live in, right? People use online banking. They probably have been doing their tax declaration for the last 10 years online, right? So digital maturity of our people, we should not underestimate that people are actually mature in dealing with digital channels. There's probably more digital tools in their cars than they're used to deal with pharma, right? Mm-hmm. So our customers, I would say, are pretty mature in leveraging a digital ecosystem as long as it offers value, right? If you now look at on the internal side, there's a big variation on the internal side, and I would like to maybe divide that in four different areas. I'd like to say maybe on the people side as one vertical, then the capability side, and I would put operations very much in the capability side, and then organizationally, and then also from a process perspective. So on the people side, the maturity, obviously, I mean, there's individuals, but our job profiles, the competencies that people have, it varies in multiple ways. And so we've been doing quite a lot of effort in trying to come up with a standardized way of coming up with competencies that people need to have in this new normal or in today's digital world, right? So a lot of effort on making sure that our people understand how to deal with these digital competencies and digital capabilities that we now all have available. It's fair to say that Pharma, Takeda is no exception. We've probably been slow in adopting or changing to this new reality on the people side as well. On the capabilities side, I would say catch quite a lot of differences, variability in the maturity of our technology stack, right? And then I would also say a huge important factor is operations, digital operations, right? In pharma, we've often delegated that or outsourced that to individual agencies. And that does not necessarily help in best practice sharing or speed to market or just efficiency. So having a good digital operational setup is, I think, a key ingredient, and making sure that you have that normalized across your organization. And then organizationally, from a culture perspective, there's a lot to do between, if you just think about the adoption of digital between the commercial organization and the medical organization. Both of them are talking to the same customer, right? So we need to make sure we level set the organization across the functions on how we can actually benefit from our digital transformation efforts. And then finally, I would say on the process side, there's quite a lot of work that we need to do on making sure that our processes are digital ready. And I think a lot, as an example, I think about resource allocation, segmentation. Quite a lot of these efforts are basically focused in how you plan for your sales rep, your field teams, your medical science liaisons. But how are we including resource allocations to take full advantage of all the other channels? So quite a lot of work in raising the whole maturity level across these four things internally. I'll repeat, that's people, that's capabilities, including operations as an important element in there, organizationally, and then process. So quite a lot of work. And I would say, let's not underestimate how smart our customers are. They're pretty smart, right? So they're used to living in today's world. And of course, some are smarter than others. But I think our biggest challenge is in raising the maturity internally.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jan. And there are some aspects I will come back to, but let me also pull in Matthew to that discussion. And I think the areas Jan mentioned, like people, capabilities, operations, and process, apply to any size of life sciences company. you from inside managing this process across Europe, probably slightly from the size of the team. On the other end, if we compare it to like companies like Takeda and Becton Dickinson, but what is your experience over the last process? And we have frequent touch points about this feedback loops and how to go from a push to a pull approach. So can you buy into what Fiona, Jan, and Andrea shared so far? What is your experience?
Absolutely, Volkmar. So we face exactly the same challenges as the rest of the panel here. Certainly, what our perspective and approach has very much been has been to go back and see this from the customer perspective and really establish what their preferences are right from the outset. I think this really helps. And the best people positioned to do that in any pharma model that I've seen are our field teams. And so what we spent a lot of time doing is making sure that they have established and agreed with their customers, with our customers, the preferences that they have, and they capture that. And they capture that clearly, not just in terms of the spectrum, but the preferences as well that are optional for those customers and options for those customers. And so this forms then the basis for that particular customer. And what we've been doing is really trying to focus down at a very, very individual level in terms of how we engage with those customers using some fairly sophisticated planning tools that we've put in place now within our CRM to help our teams communicate between themselves in the field as to who's doing what and through which channel coming through in the coming months and over a period of up to a year. And this is important because then it helps us to understand what the expectations are, which channels are likely to be used, and therefore perhaps where we're going with all of this. So this collaboration that we have within the field team, which is so critical, and this visibility that we've enabled between if you want, the medical and the commercial. Obviously, there are firewalls there with certain content, but absolutely the visibility in terms of who's engaging prospectively is critical. I think what we've also enabled is that visibility in terms of what's going on beyond those direct engagements. So in terms of what, if there's communications going out through email, that visibility is certainly seen across both parts of the organization, so they recognize other contents going out. We're trying to ensure that a good part of that is clearly seen to be coming from the field team so that they are in control of that and they recognize when that's needed and when it's not. So that may be a slight, if you want, contrast from perhaps what some other companies are trying to do. The other thing that we're also doing, trying to make sure that we pick up on what is being looked at, also in terms from an external standpoint from our customers, and making sure that we adapt as for example, if content's not being used, we adapt that and try and ensure that either its positioning or the messages within it are not as evident as perhaps we first thought. So those sort of things are some of the aspects that we're dealing with. I think really and honestly, it's about that continuous listening, the engagement with our field teams, that's critical. And we're trying to make sure that dynamic is continuous. So it's almost a 360 loop of communication between the different teams and also the region. So we're very lucky at Insight because we are a small organization, and that facilitates a slightly broader, if you want, an engagement between the different parts of the organization, and allows us to learn together as countries move forward on projects. We're very much working collaboratively with them to ensure that we all learn at a similar pace.
Yeah, and so we all have a common sense that there is not one or the other. So also, Jan, we talk about the people, or you talk about, Matthew, about the sales force you have in place, or it's still like a people first approach at Insight. on the other side, also what Jan mentioned, and also Fiona, towards a dialogue, and that our customers are smart customers. These are academic people. So, and they have, like you said, probably more mobile or digital devices around them driving into the office towards a car. So in this other theory, what you said, always the best experience you can have today on your app, on your mobile phone, is the standard for the next app you want to launch, or for the next digital communication you're going to launch. So by having this wide spectrum, and maybe looking at Andrea or Fiona both, like having said this, how do you engage your sales force? So how does this impact setting up your sales force? You have the digital approach on the one hand side, and you have the classical sales force. Do you see challenges how to match these as hybrid approach? Andrea.
I think from my side, it's very important that to create within the company right the same culture and approach and changing informations. Obviously, when I still remember when we started this transformation, all the sales force was quite skeptical or scared about this digital transformation. But I think the best is to involve them into the co-creation and what we are basically building. And we have observed that, for instance, very good examples where at the end of the day, when we have involved the sales force, I give an example, for instance, in the co-creation of the materials, and how to make sure that from the perspective of how we're going to use these materials across the channels. We have seen great ideas coming out from the field force and the sales force in terms of how to best deliver and shape the contents that we're going to then use across different channels. So it's for this reason that involving and creating an ecosystem internally where information are shared is super important. And as Matthew was mentioning, I think that we are like in the CSL before, a kind of an organization that we can consider mid-sized organization. So I think that we still have the beauty of being very well connected with the company, in teams. At the same time, there is always the challenge, right, of the growth that we are basically driving forward, that is more complexity. So how to ensure that communication and information are shared, and then whenever there are concerns that are coming up, and it's normal, because we should always remember that is a change process, a change management process. I think that we address immediately, right, whenever issues or potential concerns are coming out. And I think so far has worked very well. So I think that we should continue doing more and more, and having this approach obviously will pay off.
Yeah. Fiona, and it's a large investment companies do take, and to set up what Jan mentioned, the process and the operations, to connect the systems, to create that what I sometimes call the foundation of truth, where we keep the content ready to be used. But we don't do digital for the sake of digital. We want to sell more of our products. That's the final or the ultimate goal why we do this, and to serve the clients. From Fiona, from your perspective in BD, can you see, or do you get feedback from your colleagues in the fields that they appreciate this hybrid approach, having now this additional supplementing material or potential to reach out to HCPs, or do they sometimes feel offended, or does it even vary? Maybe is it like, I can speak for myself, like being German, are the Germans maybe more resistant to that maybe Spanish, where you're located, they're more open. Can you see differences in the Salesforce teams responding to this transformation?
So I think, it heavily depends, and I wouldn't say it's like a country. It's more around, you have early adopters, I think. I think this really involves a huge change management effort. I think what's important is that people understand that it's not an either or. So it's not for our portfolio right now. It's not like digital only type of sales activity, and that's very important. To truly understand the end-to-end customer buying journey, and to understand relevant to engage with healthcare practitioners digitally, points on when it's absolutely necessary obviously, or more, I think, preferable to engage with face. And from our experience, we're trying to build trusted relationships, both on the part of healthcare practitioners as well. It is convenient to have face-to-face interactions, because I think at the beginning of relationships, it's interesting to build credibility. There are issues that need to be addressed, but there are other situations. So with your everyday interactions, where on both you, we, without actually really compromising the quality of interaction, and actually our practitioners increasingly really value having more ready access to custom content in a more convenient way. So I think the sales force is increasingly, I think, starting to understand this. But again, it is a huge change. By the way, it's cross-functionally across the organization. IT, it's medical affairs, it's legal, so that you can actually have approved content that exploits in an agile way. You need to have everyone basically on the page. So I change management, and one thing I think that really helps is by having metrics, helping people understand where in the process we need to really kind of fine-tune our strategy. So are we developing the right content, or are we not, let's say, getting enough marketing leads, or are we not doing good qualified leads to sales qualified leads? So having that visibility through metrics really also helps one, a more robust lead management activity. At the end of the day, it's all about really generating leads and driving an efficiency. And it's also about helping understand what we're trying to do. Are we really trying to lead? Are we trying to generate a lead, and really driving much more of an accountability and clarity on the different roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. So, and that's another topic we could probably discuss another hour, about what you just mentioned about also the medical. Classically, we would say, like, we have the pre-launch or the whole submission part, the medical part, and then it comes to the commercial execution part. And now we really have those discussions to more implement also, or integrate from the beginning, from the medical pre-launch already to the commercial part. And like you say, because HCPs, our customer, they want to have more access, more information directly. And Jan, would it be like also from your point of view, like a fair assumption that the customers do not want to go back to a commercial model like the pre-COVID period? So there is like that has generated a shift and is it a fair assumption there's no way back to like a pre-COVID situation?
Well, we definitely see that in our customer base, right? So we definitely see that there's quite a lot of willingness. Now, we have to also be careful, right? I would say during COVID times, we probably went from 0 to 100%, right? And not always in the most smartest way, right? Not always with the right value proposition. So there's quite a lot of fatigue with some of our customers who've been kind of exposed, and not just from us, right? Let's not forget that we live in a world that was completely impacted by COVID. So the appointment with hairdressers, with restaurants, everything turned digital, right? So people had to adopt not just how they interact with pharma, but with all of the other services they interact with. So digital fatigue is definitely there, I would say, and we just have to understand where we pharma or life sciences, we actually can make it easier for people and our customers, healthcare professionals, to navigate this. Volkmar, if you don't mind, I just want to comment a little bit, because we talk a lot about the sales reps, right? And actually, I think sales reps are fantastic, right? So we really great. Our field teams, our medical science liaisons. I think the challenge is probably more around who are the people that design customer journeys, right? And are we thinking in ecosystems instead of my sales team, right? How does all my different touch points, my customer engagement touch points, how are they working together as an ecosystem? Are they generating data? And just like to touch on what Fiona said, and Andrea as well, is the data visibility. So make sure that all touch points have visibility to the same data, right? That we do not have different interpretations on different data sets. So I would say let's make sure we also start focusing on the group of people that design customer journeys across different functions, medical and commercial, because they're always touching the same person, the same customer, right? And I have full confidence in our sales, in our field teams, medical or commercial, that they will find and will be able and are an important element of that ecosystem. And so are all the other elements in the ecosystem, right? And we should also start focusing on those other elements and bringing those elements in the ecosystem as part of the customer journey design, instead of uniquely focusing on one. I think Fiona also said it. It's not one or the other, right? Mm-hmm. It is an omni-channel experience, right?
Yeah.
Just one thing I was going to say, which I think we tend to one quickly, I think, is that there's going to be a new generation of tech digitally savvy healthcare practitioners, right, who really are to engage digitally. And there are statistics that say that in 2025, 80% of engagements are going to go digital. I think we're going to have to potentially repurpose and rethink to accelerate that from our perspective, at least at BD.
That's a good point. And Matthew, we also talk a lot about this customer journey and how to set this up. Now, maybe a last provocative or what funny question, like looking what Fiona just said in 2025. Are old people like me and you, are they ready? Are they able to do customer journeys, to define customer journeys for this next generation? What's your experience about customer journeys?
Well, again, I think coming back to what's been said and some of the things I touched on before, I think we see as this, from our perspective, we see this as a rather individual choice, right? I mean, we are trying to serve customers where they prefer to be served. And that is the principle about how we go about not only determining what, if you want, sits in that journey and what choices then the field team have in their hands to be able to serve up, if you wish. So if you do have a particularly digitally savvy physician and they have chosen more or less to be served remotely, that's the choice, right? And what we've seen actually, and as a fallout of COVID, is we've seen physicians who in the past simply were just no way, you're not having any engagement with us, return because they actually do appreciate the engagement, but they appreciate the control that the remote engagement allows. And that, if you want, little bit distance enables them to retain an element of control that perhaps in the past with a face-to-face wasn't there. So, I could see the evolution, and certainly I've seen in the last days some data which suggests that not only is that channel quite often preferred in some markets, but in fact that it is even more powerful than perhaps even face-to-face engagement. And that's really powerful. So we should be conscious of that as we start to think about future channels. But again, always have in mind the customer preference.
Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe to wrap up before we open up for questions, that has been, thank you very much for your comments. And it has been a really interesting conversation. Like Fiona, we started with like this from monologue to dialogue. And also, Jan, you mentioned it takes like process, capabilities, operations, and the people, and that there's no one or the other, and that how we take back and take advantage of the data and the data points we have to create maybe better customer journeys also for the future and next generation. So it's a wide spectrum, and thank you very, very much to share your experience, how you drive this digital transformation and this for commercial operations. Thank you so much. And with that, I would like to close the panel and open up for questions. Thank you very much, Fiona, Andrea, Matthew, and Jan. Thank you.
Thank you.